Hello, and welcome to an intro to Anthro with two humans. I'm human number one, John McCray.
And I'm human number two, John Lehr. That's my one line.
Yeah. Do you want to do it again?
No.
And this is a podcast where we reassess what it means to be human. And the title of today's episode is Free Willy or Free Woney, Free Will, Willpower, and the real reason why little Willy won't go home. So good luck fitting that one. Good luck fitting that one on there.
I'm gonna have to lower the font. I'm gonna have to lower the. I'm gonna have to go to 10 point on that one.
And I would do not cut anything. Not cut anything.
Of course not. No.
And just to give you a little background story on today's topic is a few weeks back, John. This was actually one of your ideas. You sent me an article, and it was a review about a new book by Robert Sapolsky called Determined, A Science of Life Without Free Will. And Sapolsky is a professor of biology and neurological science at Stanford University. And in the book, Sapolsky argues against the existence of free will.
Oh, boy. Yeah, I know. I saw that. I was just like, oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
But it makes sense. We're just machines. We're just reacting to stimuli.
Yeah.
There's only one way out of this maze.
Yeah. Which we'll get to. We'll discuss it. We'll discuss what's going on. But you seem very excited about it when you sent it over.
Yeah.
What was it that appealed to you about?
Well, I love the notion that we think we're more in control of how our lives unfurl than we are. Like I always loved that. And for a scientist to prove free will, I was like, what? Yeah. And he's no slouch either.
No.
That guy, he knows what he's doing.
Right. So we'll get into that. We'll get into his book. And then a couple of other things that happened. I was talking to my wife, Mary, about this episode. And she said, well, if you're doing something on free will, you got to title it Free Willy. So that's where we got that part. And then all of the talk about Free Willy or Willy got me thinking about, remember the song back in the 70s by the band Sweet, which was Little Willy?
Yeah,
it was causing. It'll be an earworm now, But it's you say there's a line in the song that says, "Because little Willy won't go home, but you can't push Willy round. Willy won't go. Try telling everybody, but oh no, little Willy won't go home." So it got me thinking, if Sapolsky's right, then it might not be that little Willy doesn't want to go home. It may be that little Willy doesn't have he's not able to go home. He doesn't have the free will to go home.
Well, he may want to, but that doesn't mean he's going to get there.
Right. So now I got that. Now it's an earworm for me. Like I said, and now I've just heard that in the back of my mind. And then also, John, this is the first week of 2024.
Here we go. This is our second episode of the season, of our season 2, which, by the way, we have significantly topped 3,000 downloads. And I know some people might be rolling their eyes out there, but let me just say, you got to have 3,000 before you have 3,001.
Right.
Well, actually, we have 3,002. We're like 3,200 downloads right now.
Really?
Yes, we are.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
But the thing is, with the New Year's, people are making resolutions. They're trying to resolutions undoubtedly have to do with involve willpower. So people are trying to change their lives, use willpower.
Dry January. People decide not to drink.
Yeah. And then there's Veganuary, where people also, they try to stop eating meat or try to go vegan just for January. That's another one.
Veganuary. I didn't know about Veganuary. I like saying Veganuary.
Yeah. It's
easy to do here in LA. Vegan food is delicious out here.
Yeah.
I'll eat anything at a vegan place.
It's really hard. We've talked about it before. It's hard to go out with people. If you're going vegan, it's hard to go out with people, your friends who aren't going vegan.
Yes. Yeah.
You can only hang out with vegans.
It's tough to go to a diner when you're vegan.
yeah, everything. Even sitting down you've already consumed some sort of meat. Sitting down on the bench.
Yeah, it's easy to be vegan when you're in when you're in Los Angeles, but try going vegan when you're at a TGI Friday. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Walking in the door, you've already inhaled a bunch of animal products. They're already on you.
Yeah.
So today, John, I thought we could talk about free will, willpower, and the real reason why little Willy won't or possibly can't go home.
That's fantastic.
Okay.
This is this one. I'm sending this one off to the Webbies. This one. Yeah.
Oh, no. Let me listen to it first. Don't do anything crazy. All
right.
Suddenly they start taking away our downloads. It's like people somehow you guys are back down to 200. People have returned them. So anyway, John, I'm going to ask you, do you have any New Year's resolutions for this year?
No, I don't. I have zero. I just, because I've learned, I know I don't have any willpower. I have zero willpower.
Right.
I mean, I'm good at getting stuff done. I guess so there's willpower involved in that, but I've over the years realized all I can do is the next indicated action. I can do the next thing.
Yeah.
And I do think ahead. I have long-term projects and everything, but I always, you and I joke around. Willpower is wasted on people who don't need it.
Right. Right. So,
because when I was trying to quit drinking, everybody was like, "Well, just stop," and I'm like, "You don't understand my brain at all. We are very different people."
If it was that easy, I wouldn't be in this situation.
You think I didn't think of that?
My resolution was to get us over 3,000 downloads, and I've already got it.
Take the rest of the year off. You're done.
I'm done. I could do.
Excellent.
No, I used to always take my resolutions very seriously. And for a large part of my life, I would, like, the time between Christmas and New Year's, I would sit down and really kind of meditate and try to think about what I was going to try to do to make myself better, will myself to be better.
I didn't know that about you. I did not know that. It doesn't surprise me.
Well, it was, remember in The Great Gatsby, at the end of The Great Gatsby, Gatsby's dad shows up.
Yes.
And spoiler alert if you haven't read it. But he gives Nick Carraway, the narrator, he gives him a book that Gatsby had when Gatsby was a kid. And in the back of the book, or written in the margins somewhere, it's all of the things, so the routine, the things that Gatsby wanted to do to make himself a better person.
The Gatsby. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I did. I was like a cross between Gatsby at that point without the money, and that kid from Breaking Away who thought he was Italian, or acted like he was Italian. That's how I was.
So you started shaving your legs.
Yeah. But the thing is, I was trying to will myself to be a better person. I think what it was. Yeah. And that's got me thinking now, like, why is it at the beginning of a new year that we set resolutions for ourselves to become better people? Why at that time period exactly?
Well, it's a restart. It's a birth. It's a, you hitting the do-over.
Yeah.
You're hitting the button. Okay, that didn't work out. 2023 was not so great.
Let's start it again.
2024, here we go.
Mary sent me a cartoon, which I'll have to find it and I'll post it. But it's very funny. It's just like this sobbing little cartoon, changing the date, changing 3 to 4 for the resolutions. I'm like, quit my job, start my dream job or something. But I came across an article from 1951 by Isidore Thomer titled "The New Year's Resolution in Ascetic Protestantism."
And
this was kind of this was interesting because Thorner sees a relationship between what we do as a New Year's resolution now and the ascetic Protestantism of England in the 17th and 18th centuries. And of course, by ascetic or asceticism, we're talking about, these practices that entailed severe discipline, self-control, or abstention.
God damn, that's where we come from. No wonder we're so unhappy.
Right. And Thorner said, this was back in 1951, but he said, the ascetic Protestants had a, quote, strong moral conviction that the godly man can and ought to control his emotions in behalf of a rationally organized life devoted to bringing out the kingdom of God on earth.
Oh, let me yawn.
Yeah.
You're on this rock for a blink. Blink.
Yeah.
And that's how we spend it. The Protestants really screwed us up, man.
It's brutal.
Pilgrims. Who knew? Who knew how that would start a domino effect?
Yeah. And everybody they were only living to like 35, 40 anyways. Like how much indulgence were you having at that time? You know what I mean?
I don't know if this happens to you, but because of my lifestyle and that I live, a unique sort of lifestyle outside of the sort of 9 to 5 thing. I have a lot of friends who say, God, I wish I'd sowed my oats more when I was in my 20s. Yeah. And I'm looking at them going, what the hell were you doing? What were you doing? I, did everything in my 20s.
Right.
But yeah, it's, and God, and then you look at like these, I don't know if you've read or heard, I'm sure you've heard of the book Tiger Mom, which is about this mother who, Tiger Mom is kind of infamous in the parenting world of this mother who, took hammered her kids with stuff to make them get them into Harvard. That basically, you're constantly, there's no time to be a kid. And I don't know if you've met, people who go to Ivy League schools, but I don't want to generalize, but I'm going to, a lot of unhappy people. They don't seem joyous.
Right.
They seem they're rich.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
I'll have to look into Tiger Mom.
God, you're gonna die. She is so hard on them. My God. She's a drill sergeant. She thinks being a mother is being a drill sergeant.
Wow.
And she's coming from a good place. She wants to give them the best chance in life. But go practice your piano, and then go to your jujitsu, and then your tutor's coming over, and then you've got to do volunteer work because that looks good, and then
you end up 45 and you don't know how to interact with people or what to do.
Exactly.
Or you get laid off from your job that's beyond your control and you have no idea what.
Right.
But anyway, back to Thorner. Thorner says that, usually these ascetic Protestants, their belief system entailed a high degree of emotional control founded on effective repression. So by effective repression, we're talking about, okay, you got to give up something. You don't want to be dancing or drinking or smoking. It's like you don't do anything. You know what I mean? And basically it was control your emotions and don't give in to your vices. And for Thorner, one of his examples was John Wesley, who was the founder of the Methodist Church. And Wesley used to, he would expel people from the Methodist movement, anybody who showed a lack of emotional discipline.
I wouldn't have lasted a week.
Me neither. Yeah. I mean, part of the reason why you're coming to a movement is you want discipline. And then to say, like, okay, you don't have any discipline, get out of here.
We're not going to show you how. We're just kicking you out if you don't have it.
And then Thorner says, this ideal of the emotionally controlled man or woman remained part of English and therefore American culture even after the initial Protestant fervor subsided in the 19th and 20th centuries.
Yeah, for sure. It's baked in.
Right. And he says, therefore, it would seem reasonable to expect the development of some practice or custom acknowledging and expressive of the guilt feelings due to the breaches of the normative expectation.
And that's where alcohol came in.
Yeah. Right. Even though it's not part of our, it's not up in the forefront anymore. But as a culture, we still have that because that was the founding basis of us as an American culture.
Well, for sure. I mean, you look at, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, work hard and the American dream will come to you. That right there is, I think a direct result.
Right. And that's what Thorner goes in to say. This was his hypothesis, but his idea was our idea of this New Year's resolution that we all do as a culture every year is the remnant of that Protestant asceticism of like trying to give up something, repress our emotions, try to do something to make ourselves better.
Yeah, people. Because it is such a rejection of who we were the previous year that somehow that was bad, and now we're going to improve ourselves.
Yeah. And as he says, the New Year's resolution is a determination to control what are felt to be weaknesses of character.
Right. And it's so self-obsessive. It's such navel gazing. It's just me. I'm going to focus on me getting better. And it's usually to get something, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to stop drinking, but it's because we want to move forward in our career, or, we want to get a significant other, or we want a better body, we gain through these New Year's resolutions, and there's very little focus on anybody other than us.
Right.
And
if you think about it, it's all about giving up something. Again, it comes back to that repression. Yeah. Usually it's like, I'm going to stop eating. I'm going to work out. It's something that you're trying to force yourself to do, trying to will yourself to do.
Yeah. I mean, isn't that connected to Lent? I mean, isn't that, where did the Catholics come into all of this?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Thorner says there's a difference between this Protestant asceticism and like what you have in Lent or Ramadan for
Yom Kippur,
for Muslims. Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
where you're making the mundane holy. You give up smoking to remind yourself that you to make it godly, or to I get you. Okay.
Yeah, and also, when you give up something for Lent, you're doing it for what, 40 days. You're not saying that this is going to be something I'm giving up forever. Right. And that's what the for the Protestant asceticism and for New Year's resolutions, when you make it, even though we all know probably you won't keep it.
Right. That's the thing. It's a fool's errand. You know you're going to fail.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Yeah. And you make it as if you're in your mind, or you're publicly pledging, I'm giving this up. So, because people always tell what their New Year's resolutions are. And the idea is that this is for the rest of your life. This is going to be a change that will change you forever. And in a sense, that way, it's like being, the pledge that you make when you're born again as a, Christian, or when you, or like, remember how they used to have for alcoholics too, there was the taking of the pledge. You would stand up in front of everybody, go down, make the pledge, as if that was going to change everything from that day forward.
Yes. We're in control. We're in the driver's seat. Anything that's going wrong in our life is our fault.
Right.
We've done something wrong.
Yeah. That's where it comes down to that repressive, like you're wrong. There's a character flaw in you because you give into these vices, or you give into these things that you shouldn't be giving into. And therefore you have to change. You have to will yourself to be better. It was also interesting in this article by Thorner. It was written in 1951, like I said, and he has a list of the common New Year's resolutions of 1947.
Oh boy, this is good.
And it's basically the same as what we're doing now. Like number one was improve my disposition, be more understanding, control my temper.
Oh, like, that's nice. I like that. Yeah. But but here's the thing: you wouldn't have a temper if you could control it. Of course, you can't control it. Your frontal cortex gets flooded, and you're a dick.
Yeah. You can't just say, I'm going to stop being an asshole from January 1st.
Right? It's just Only an asshole would say that.
It takes a little more work than that. You know what I mean?
It's a little vague, too. It's a little vague.
Yeah. The other one was improve my character, live a better life. So that's kind of like...
That's vague. Okay.
Yeah. Then we start getting into like the common way, like stop smoking or smoke less. I always like people smoke less. It's like, look, you're not going to be smoking less.
I had a friend, and I'm sure we've all known this guy, who would keep a pack of cigarettes around, and he'd have one every now and then when he wanted one. And I was always like, what's wrong with you? I hated that. I was like, no, you smoke them all, and then you go buy more.
Yeah. Immediately. One after the other. One after the other.
Chain smoker. Yeah, you were an amazing chain smoker. You were one of those smokers who would light the tip of his cigarette with the previous one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
God. Don't lose the connection.
Yeah, keep it going.
Round the horn. The other one we get down to is lose weight, which people still say that one.
Yeah.
And then back then there was one in 1947, gain weight.
Really? We need to bring that back a little bit. We need that back a little bit. Especially out here in LA. Especially when you get older. The old adage is it's either your butt or your face.
What is it? What does that mean? What does that mean?
Well, I think it means if you lose too much, you lose your butt, but it's at the expense. You start getting that gaunt look if you get too thin.
Okay.
Yeah.
But isn't that amazing? There was a time where people were as a whole were too thin. After the Depression and everything, people were like, you got to put on weight. You hardly ever hear that anymore.
It's so funny. I saw on online somewhere they were showing muffin pans from before the 1950s and muffin pans after the 1950s.
Yeah,
and they just get bigger and bigger and bigger.
It's like when people back in the 20s or 30s, you would have one chicken for the entire family.
Right.
Everybody would, and now it's like you bring out one chicken, that's like for one person in your family.
Oh, you still hungry? Go upstairs and think about how you're going to be a better person.
Yeah. So then we go, well, how successful are New Year's resolutions at making lasting changes? In other words, how successful are we at controlling and improving ourselves?
Oh, boy.
Yeah. And in a 1972 article titled Behavioral Self-Control, Power to the Person, Michael J. Mahoney and Carl E. Thoresen looked at self-control and willpower. And they say that the term self-control has meant different things to different people. Its more popular synonym by far has been willpower. So they were getting back to willpower.
Yes.
And they say that that's a vaguely defined inner force, which is what you and I have talked about. I think they're right. I think we try to think of how do you define willpower? You know what I mean? Or you could say, well, it's you control your emotion, but how? How do you do it?
Yeah, right. You make there's a conscious decision that you make to change, to decide where you're going next.
Right.
What you're going to do next.
Right.
But anybody who's ever been to Vegas knows that does not exist. Because in Vegas, you end up doing stuff that you have no idea. And you know that people smarter than you, the way they've laid out that we've talked about this, the way they lay out the game rooms and the way that the lights, everything is thought through to just guide primates into putting their money into slots, Yeah.
You don't even have to go to Vegas. Go to the supermarket. Go to any supermarket.
You're right.
And they have already, by the time you walk in the door, they are guiding you through making purchases. And so Mahoney and Thoresen also say that the notion of self-control associated with the ideals of freedom and self-improvement is strongly embedded in our society, which is true, I think. We're free. We're free people. Therefore, my self-control, I'm in charge of my self-control.
Well, it's terrifying to know that you don't have control. It's terrifying to us, Jesus Christ, if we don't have any control over anything, what the hell are we doing? We're just free falling.
Yeah, it's pretty depressing. And that's what they say. They say, we value self-control because of its role in the survival of our society and culture.
Yeah.
Because one measure of a civilized society is the degree to which its inhabitants direct, maintain, and coordinate their activities without external coercion.
It's so funny because you look at crime, and people who are anti-crime think, okay, we make the punishment more intense and it will make people, keep people from committing crimes, which study after study shows that's not the case at all.
Right.
And that has very little to do. There's very little deciding to commit a crime,
And I mean, look at January 6th. Those were supposed to be the party of law and order or whatever. It's like, where's your self-control on that thing?
Somebody rubbing poo on the walls of the Capitol.
Right.
Nobody decided that.
So, and then the Thorson and Mahomey, they say, well, how does the concept of willpower actually work? Which is what we talked about. And they say, well, the person who demonstrates self-control by resisting a major temptation, such as a heavy smoker who quits cold turkey, is often described as having willpower.
Right.
But how do we know he has willpower? Well, he quit smoking, didn't he? So usually what we do, they're saying, like, we go back. It's like, well, we say he has willpower because he quit smoking, and therefore that proves he had willpower.
When I quit smoking, it had very little to do with willpower. It was more just embracing pain. I just wanted more pain.
Yeah.
And the pain of quitting was something that appealed to me because I was so depressed.
I know. We've talked about that before, but it was always like seeing what your body can do. What your body mentally and physically can do.
Yeah.
And once you become addicted to something, then you get that same sort of, I don't know, thrill or whatever it is, that kind of a curious thrill of like, what happens if I take that away now?
Yes. Right. And you've got to enjoy not feeling that it's not fun.
Yeah.
You've got to, and that takes a very dark soul.
I know. So anyway, Mahoney and Thorson then say, in other words, using willpower as an explanation for why someone stopped doing something doesn't really explain the process of what happened.
Yes.
Because we don't really know what willpower is objectively.
Exactly. Because we can't generalize on this stuff. Each path is totally different.
Right.
And the dominoes fall different ways. But we all think, oh, he just decided, to change it. And we love that story, that idea, like you said, of being reborn, of turning things over. I'm going to be a new person now. And we love seeing that in the movies and it's just not that simple, of course.
Right. And I quit drinking years ago on the day before Thanksgiving, Thanksgiving night. I was still drinking the night before Thanksgiving. It was Thanksgiving I quit. And
was I with you on that Thanksgiving? No. Where were you?
I was in Chicago, and I was all pissed off because everyone had gone home. Everyone had gone because they were all getting ready to go to their families for Thanksgiving. Yeah. And I was out there alone, all the bar, and I was just so drunk and stumbling around Chicago trying to find an open bar. And finally, that next morning, I woke up and I was so hungover and so sick and naked and just like pasty. And I was like, I'm going to quit. I'm not drinking again. And I made that. And did I know if that? But the point is, I had tried to quit many times before.
Exactly.
Many times.
Exactly. You had said that to yourself many times.
Yeah.
Why that time?
Right. So it wasn't just like willpower from this day forward. No, it was like many times saying willpower from this day forward, hundreds of times before it actually took. But so getting back to Mahoney and Thorson say that if we're going to succeed at like quitting a behavior or exhibit self-control and willpower, we must make efforts to control the situational cues in our environment. And they say that success comes through recognizing that self-control is integrally bound up with immediate environmental considerations.
Oh.
Okay. So, in other words, and then they go on, they say, during the past decade, we have again learned that an individual's ability to control his own actions is a function of his knowledge and control over situational factors. And basically, a rapidly expanding body of evidence indicates that effective, durable methods of self-regulation can be established if attention is given to the significant relationships between the person and his environment.
Situational football. Right there.
Yeah.
That's what made the New England Patriots so great. And having the best coach and quarterback in the history of football. But situational football. Let's be ready for whatever comes our way as best we can. As best we can, and then adjust on the fly. It's all process. Everything's process. God damn it.
And control, like, okay, if you have trouble, eating peanut M&Ms, which is what I do. I'll use myself as
I love
example.
those. God, they're so good.
So do I. I can't stop. I am addicted to them.
Yeah. If you have a bathtub of them, I'm getting in the bathtub and I'm going to eat them.
Right.
I'm going to stick out my tongue and stick one to my tongue over and over until that bathtub's empty.
That's an experiment. We got to get it. We got to get a grant for that. We got to get a grant for
that. You fill a tub with peanut M&Ms, and I'm going to do it.
Don't let him out. Don't let him out. He can't use the bathroom. But the thing is, if that's I'm addicted to, these peanut M&Ms, it's probably not a good idea for me to have peanut M&Ms in my house. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You have to. You have to control the situation around you that are your cues, your situational
Unless
cues.
you want to flip it and you're going to put peanut M&Ms around, but then it's about embracing the pain of having them there. Then it's a whole different kind of thing. It's still not willpower. It's self-loathing. It's embracing how much you hate yourself.
Yeah.
Because when I quit smoking, I kept a pack next to my bed just to make me want them. Just because I just whenever I wanted a cigarette, I would put one in my mouth, and I've talked about this, and light a lighter and hold it as close to the tip as I could just to watch my hand shake.
Yeah.
It was like my version of cutting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's I don't know. What do you think would have happened if you didn't have that in it? It wouldn't have been at the forefront of your mind of I can't do this.
I don't think I would have been able to quit if I didn't hate myself so much.
Yeah. That was a situational cue. You control you control the environment. You made the environment.
I'm going to make this self-loathing work for me, damn it.
Yeah. Mahoney and Thorson, they give a really good example from the Odyssey, from Homer's Odyssey.
Oh,
and
boy.
remember,
God.
Remember when Odysseus he wants to hear the sirens. He wants to hear the song of the sirens.
Yeah, you don't want that.
The song of the sirens. It becomes so enchanting.
Yeah,
you forget everything. You give up your job. You forget about your. It sounds a lot like heroin.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
But remember, it's like but he wants to hear it. He wants to hear it. But what is he? He doesn't just go in and try to gut it out to hear, to hear the sirens. What he does is he has all of his crew timed to the mast of his ship. And then he gives them the order that says, no matter what I say, if I tell you, even though I'm your captain, if I tell you to let me down, don't let me down. Okay.
It's like the end with Dom DeLuise and Burt Reynolds, where Burt says, Burt hires Dom to kill him. And he says, no matter what I say, no matter what I say, you gotta kill me.
Yeah.
And then you have a comedy right there. Boom.
Right. And then, Odysseus, he tells his crew too, he has them all put beeswax in their ears so that they can't hear it. So, and they also can't hear him. So in other words, he's not just going in trying to willpower himself to resist the sirens.
He's using technology, rope and wax.
Yeah. He's controlled the environment. He's made it to where he's helped it. So in other words, willpower.
He outfoxed the sirens.
Right. Exactly. And so in other words, I guess that the takeout of this is like, willpower is good. But willpower needs help. Willpower needs help.
It's one facet. It's one part of change, of successful change. To want it is only one part. And I think that's where we've gone wrong because of the goddamn Protestants. We're blaming it all on them.
We'll leave that out there. So what was it? Johnny Cash was supposed to have kicked amphetamines kind of in the similar way, right? He had himself locked in his basement or something like that.
He said, whatever I say,
don't let me out until I'm cured, until I kicked it,
Okay, I changed my mind. Let me out.
No,
you said no matter what. I know. I said that, but you know what? I think when I get out, I'm going to kill you, Johnny. You said, long pause. Okay, let me out. Let me out.
Or like after 20 minutes, like, okay, I'm clean. So you've heard him in there just tearing up the room. Okay, it's out. Devil's out. So anyway, all of these ideas of willpower and self-control sound reasonable and make sense as long as we have free will.
Right. Exactly.
Or the will to consciously control our own actions.
Yeah.
But what if we don't have free will and we really aren't in charge of our own actions? What do we do then?
Yeah. Surrender.
Yeah. That's essentially the argument of Robert Sapolsky's book, Determined: A Science of Life Without Free Will. Sapolsky, again, like we said, he's a biology and neurology professor. And he basically comes out and says that all of his research in biology, evolution, genetics, and neurology has led him to the conclusion that we don't have free will.
Yeah. And right there, I'm putting a big question mark because how many times, that somebody's knowledge of everything led to the world is definitely flat too,
All right. I know it's hard. And even he will say that he's not comfortable with that conclusion.
Good.
That everything is already determined.
Good, because I have something for him to give up for Lent.
But he says there's no other conclusion you can make. And I wish we had time to go into this entire book because it's a fascinating book. And he's a great writer and he's able to communicate in a way that everybody, including me, can understand. And he's funny. He provides examples. But we don't have that time. So I'm going to just try to focus on just some of the main points out of his book. But
just use your willpower to distill this book for all of us.
Yeah. I've tried to use my willpower to keep us down to like an hour and 10 minutes or something.
Good.
But before we begin talking about Sapolsky's book, we need to get a little background on what exactly we mean by free will.
Yes.
And to me, honestly, I've always considered the question of free will to be something only philosophy teachers or philosophy students in college and maybe preachers think about. And other than that, I've just always concluded that we're in charge of our own actions. And in his book, Free Will, a very short introduction, the philosopher Thomas Pink says that the idea of being in control of how we act, the up to usness, meaning everything's up to us, of our actions, is an idea we all share. And I think that's true. I think most people like to believe that they're in charge of what they're doing.
Yes. Well, it's Darwinian, isn't it? It's like, that's how we protect ourselves. We're in charge.
Right.
If we thought all the time that a bus could hit us at any moment or an asteroid could come take us out, what's the point? We'd all kill off ourselves.
Well, it's going beyond that even. It's like, am I really making the decisions to guide my own life?
Yes.
Or are those being placed, or is all of that predetermined somehow?
Yes.
And Pink says, however skeptical we may become when doing philosophy, meaning college students who are taking an intro to philosophy course and suddenly are like just blabbing on about all this stuff. Once we fall back into ordinary life, we all continue to think of how we act as being up to us. And that's the up to usness.
Yeah.
And he says, thinking of ourselves as being in control is what enables us to see living as something valuable.
Yes.
so you're absolutely
that's what I'm
right.
saying. Yeah. Because if it's not up to us, then it's Crazyville. It's chaos.
Right, right.
Mm-hmm.
But, are we really in charge? He asked, are we really in charge of our actions? The problem of whether we are ever in control of how we act and what this control involves is what philosophers call the free will problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so this has been something that, he says that the term will, or what we consider a will, has usually been defined by philosophers to be a vital psychological capacity that all normal humans possess, a capacity for decision making.
Yes.
So we consider our will, or having free will, as being a way for, or the freedom for us to make our own decisions.
Yes.
For ourselves.
And you just got to look at self-help books, or get rich quick books, because every rich guy you talk to, then they are always like, yeah, I fell into this. I wasn't even thinking, the story always comes down to like, some guy asked me to invest in this. And I said, sure, and then they're smart. Don't get me wrong. They're smart and, make decisions, and they're bright people, but they didn't, it's not like looking in a mirror and doing affirmations to get yourself to be rich.
You inherited
none of them say that.
And Pink says, that this capacity to make capacity to make decisions or choices seems central to our capacity to control and take charge of our own actions.
Yeah.
And then he says, freedom, true freedom, is always exercised through action, through what we deliberately do or refrain from doing, and through action alone. So you can have all the wants and feelings, and you can have all your desires, but ultimately the freedom's going to come through your actions. Can you actually put those wants and desires into action?
Yep.
And that, I think, is what kind of, comes down to when we're talking about freedom. Is I could be in a prison cell, for example, and want to be free, or have a desire, or like a dream of being free.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not really freedom unless I can get out of that prison cell.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But it is, because you can become free in a prison cell like that. Like, I think that's where all of this is going, is that it's just not out, just because what we think should come from our willpower. If we give up that idea, then we truly do have free will.
Yeah.
Because we're only measuring it in results.
Right. That's interesting. That's an interesting thought about it. So he says, over the past 2,000 years, the free will problem has essentially boiled down to a few different schools of thoughts. And the first one are called the libertarians. And I'm not talking about the political libertarian. I'm not talking about Ron
those
Paul.
Guys. I was following a guy in a libertarian last night on the road. And I was just like, hey, you're driving within the lines. Libertarian.
Yeah. It's those guys always, like Ron Paul, always kind of seemed to make sense when he was talking about like weed, about marijuana, and then you'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, that kind of makes sense, and then he'd go off and say something completely racist or something. You'd be like, wait a second,
wait, how did we get here?
Yeah, let's get back to the weed. But we're talking about these philosophical libertarians when it comes to the free will problem, or the free will issue.
Yes.
And what they argue is
the John Stuart Mills out there.
Yeah. They argue that we have free will, and that we are truly free to act without any connection to what has happened before.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, we're free agents to do whatever we want in this world. And again, we're talking about philosophical libertarians and not political libertarians.
Yeah.
But in other words, what the philosophical libertarians would say is, if I have free will, I should be able to do something completely novel of my own free will that is disconnected from the events that preceded it.
Yes. Doesn't this always lead to suicide, these guys? It's always like you should have the freedom to kill yourself.
Right.
In the end, it always comes down to that.
Yeah. So in other words, to be truly free, you have to, you had things that led you up to a certain point, but you should be able to just go in an entirely different direction.
Yeah,
To do
hit the reset.
otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nope, not anymore. That was the old me. This is the new me. Boom.
Right. It's completely different. You know what I mean? Completely different than what led you up to that point. And on the other hand, you have the causal determinists. And according to Pink, the causal determinists say that everything that happens, including our own actions, has already been causally determined to occur.
Yes.
Everything that happens results from earlier causes that determine their effects by ensuring that these effects must occur, leaving no chance for things to happen otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all a machine.
Right.
Reality is this machine, and that yeah.
And so, or like, what happened, what I'm doing right now, what I'm thinking right now is due to what immediately preceded it.
Right.
Which was due to what immediately preceded that, which was due to what immediately going all the way back.
Yes.
So I'm just on a chain. I'm on a train, just reacting to what immediately preceded.
Yes. Yes. Isn't that like what chaos theory is? Is that like, it can go all of these infinite directions, but ultimately you can trace them back to why.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Now we're gonna we're gonna have to do that one too, because that's fascinating as well.
Yeah. Crazy, Bill.
So Pink says, if causal determinism is true, okay, then at any time what will happen in the future is already entirely fixed and determined by the past.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus.
So you see where we're going with this. We see where we're going.
So I just said, oh, Jesus, because of some other reason.
Yeah. And these two arguments, they lead to other subgroups, such as the incompatibilists, who say that the idea of free will is completely incompatible with the idea of causal determinism.
Okay, incompatibilist. That's a terrible name.
I know.
They've got to rethink that.
Rebranding. You need some rebranding.
Incompatibilist. Jesus.
Yeah. Not to me. That's going to be a long bumper sticker to put on the back of your car.
I was just thinking like a softball team where the incompatibilists.
Compatibilists. Then you have the compatible, the opposite of the incompatibilists, or the compatibilists, who say that Pink says that they say that the up to usness of our actions, our freedom to act otherwise, is entirely compatible with our actions having been all along predetermined. So they're trying to bring it back and everything's pretty much, it happens based on what happened before, but yet we could still have free will in there. There's still room for us.
I don't know. That sounds like your cake and eat it too to me.
Yeah, I think
I'm anti-compatibilist.
Yeah. Yeah, I think at some point it becomes so depressing that everybody has to try to come up with a way to make it work, that we still have control over it. But and he says, that's why most of us we're incompatibilists. Like we like to feel that there's free will.
Yeah.
And that we're in charge of our decisions.
Yes. And to me, that's the interesting part of it is it's not whether free will exists or not, but our need to feel like there is free will.
Right.
Is the thing that's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to think of I'm just on the train. I'm on the train. I have no idea where the train's going, and
but in our heart of hearts, we know that is a part of being a human. We are just on the train because we realize it all the time. Jesus, how did I get here? I'm just like everybody else. I'm just,
Yeah.
So the free will, I think, isn't a big part of it. Just thinking of us as like a machine, is that the free will is to make us think that it's self-obsession. It's to make us think that we're important. And so we're going to protect ourselves and live longer and propagate the species, because that's what it all boils down to.
Yeah. But it ultimately, we'll get to it. We'll get to it here in a second. So one of the things, this has been the philosophical argument for about, 2,000 years or more than 2,000 years. This debate between free will, people who believe in free will, and people who believe in causal determinism.
Okay.
And then about 60 years ago, neurologists got involved. Scientists got involved.
Here we go.
And they started putting electrodes on people and doing electroencephalograms to see what actually happened to the brain or in the brain when we decide to do something.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in 1983, a researcher named Benjamin Libet conducted an experiment to determine what happens when we decide to do something. Or as Andrea Lavazza says in the article Free Will and Neuroscience, Libet's experiment focused on the allegedly unconscious intentions taking place in decisions regarded as free and voluntary. Okay, so he wanted to see what's happening when we think that we're taking a free and voluntary
I can't wait to hear what the experiment is. What is it?
well,
how did he boil it down?
So he hooked up EEGs to all of his subjects, and then he invited the participants to move their right wrist and to report the precise moment when they had the impression that they had decided to do so. So he hooks them up. Yeah.
Your right wrist? What a weird thing.
Right. Yeah. And he had a big clock in front of it. So the idea was you would all right, move your right wrist and tell me when you think you've made the decision to move your right wrist.
So this is crazy, Bill. I don't understand.
Yeah.
I'd be a terrible participant. I'd be like, wait, what?
Yeah. It could be anything. People have always, because this has become the big scientific experiment, the watershed mark, the benchmark for any scientific study of free will is the Libet experiment. Yeah. But other people did it with fingers. So if someone says, okay, you move your finger, but tell me when you have made the decision to move your finger. Okay. So usually I would be like, I'm going to move my finger. And then I would immediately move my finger.
Yeah, it's like nanoseconds, right?
Right. Milliseconds.
I'd make it weirder. Like you got to sing a C sharp. Now, tell me when you decided to sing that.
Yeah. So you could do it with that too, but you would say like, all right, try it now. Let's try it. You tell me when you're going to do a C sharp and then do the C sharp.
Right now.
Okay. So there was a decision beforehand
to do it.
Sing the sing sharp. Yeah, okay. And there was a little bit of a time lag between the decision to do it and then actually doing it.
That's true. Yes.
So what Libet found though,
when you jump off of it's when you jump off of a cliff, like into a lake. Have you ever done that? Like a 20-foot jump or something, and you get right up to it and you can't do it. Like your body just won't do it. And you really have to decide. I guess that's willpower. You have to decide, I'm going to do it. But I don't know. I when I look back on doing those things, I never felt like I made a decision to do it. I just kind of did it.
But you had to somehow your body did it because of you.
But I
you
felt
were
like
in charge
it was more complicated than that. Like I kind of blacked out and did, like part of me chose to do it, and part of me, you know what I'm saying? I feel like it's more complex.
Do you feel like you had the freedom to do it? I mean, no one was forcing you to do it. They weren't.
Oh yeah, there was peer pressure. Hell yeah, everybody else was doing it.
So there was.
I did it out of shame. I did it out of shame.
So it wasn't a free act on your part. You were doing something that was forced upon you.
Yeah, and I forced myself to do something I didn't want to do, that my body didn't want to do.
Right. And was that free will allowed you to do that? I guess is what. I
guess so. I don't know. Jesus. Yeah. I'm stupid. This podcast is making me realize how stupid I am.
Well, let's keep going. We can't stop. But what Libet found was that there was action in the brain prior to when the subjects were actually conscious of their decisions to take the action.
Okay.
So in other words, about 350 milliseconds prior to becoming consciously aware. Consciously aware of what they were going to do, the brain was already preparing to take that action. And so the argument was, if your brain is preparing, like you could see the action in the brain preparing to move the wrist.
Yeah.
Prior to you actually thinking or consciously saying to yourself, I'm going to move my wrist, then you're responding to something that happened before. It's not a free action. It's not a free action because something subconsciously is already provoking you to take that action.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So, yeah.
Jesus.
And so anyway, what Lavazza says, talking about Libet, is that the findings seem to show that our simple actions, and therefore potentially also more complex ones, are triggered by unconscious neural activity, and that the awareness of those actions only occurs at a later time when we think that we are willing to act.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I agree with that. It makes sense. You hear a lion roar, right? And it takes time for that to just mechanically process, for the sound to hit the eardrum to take it, the brain decides what to do to it, and then you do it. You decide to do it. You decide to run.
Right.
Yeah.
But you're not consciously deciding to run that.
No.
In other words, you're not making a free conscious choice.
No, you've just
the decision
been told.
It's already been told by the environment. Like,
you know
your reaction
to the
environment.
Feel better about myself for all the stupid shit I've done.
Yeah, it does.
That's the way I'm taking it.
I know. That's the way I'm taking it. Yeah, I mean, we're responding, whether we not. I mean, according to this, whether we know it or not, we're already responding unconsciously to environmental stimuli that are beyond our control, and yet we think that we're making a conscious decision.
That totally makes it. We're all little experiments as to see which route is the superhuman race that's going to keep us around forever.
Yeah.
Soon we're going to have chips in our heads, and then all of this will be for naught, and we can just play video games in our brain. I can't wait for that.
Oh, that'd be nice. Well,
that's going to be good. Yeah.
But Lavazza says an unconscious brain process has already decided what to do when the subject still does not know what she would choose and thinks she still has the power to decide.
Makes sense, because choice is this conscious part, which is just one aspect of who we are, and usually the slowest part of us is the realization of where we are now. Is like the part that takes energy. That's why we meditate, right?
Yeah. Oh, but then Lavazza says that, subsequent research in psychology also shows that our mind works and makes choices without our conscious control. So again, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And ultimately, Lavazza says consciousness, which should exercise control and assess the reasons for a choice, is thus allegedly causally ineffective, a mere epiphenomenon, to use the terminology of the philosophy of the mind.
We trick ourselves into thinking we made the choice.
Right. And this is actually called the zombie challenge. It has a term, and it's based on the amazing wealth of findings in recent cognitive science that demonstrate the surprising ways in which our everyday behavior is controlled by automatic processes that unfold in the complete absence of consciousness. So lot of what
we're just sleepwalking. We're zombies. We're just sleepwalking through life.
Yeah.
Jesus, I knew it.
Isn't that? I mean, it's awful and also like fascinating as well.
Freeing.
I keep coming back to it.
I just love that I don't have to take responsibility for anything anymore.
Yeah.
I'm zombieing, man. What do you expect?
Yeah,
Sorry.
And
Sorry I cut you off.
Like, how much of your day do you really remember consciously remember at the end of the day?
Oh, and I'm even lower than the average. I don't remember anything or doing anything.
I mean, somehow you drive to work or you drive across town and you drive home, and I can't remember a single thing I saw or consciously saw or remember.
Our friend Carlos, who is a listener to this show, is one of those guys who can really remember things. Like, he'll remember our past, and I can't remember any of it. Like, I don't have any recollection at all of doing a lot of this stuff. I'm a zombie. Jesus.
How about immediate past? I can't remember things that we've talked about in this podcast. Like
I already forgot what you just said now.
I know. That's what's so frustrating about it. Anyway, all of this brings us back to Sapolsky's book, Determined: The Science of Life Without Free Will. And what Sapolsky says, when you behave in a particular way, which is to say, when your brain has generated a particular behavior, it is because of the determinism that came just before, which was caused by the determinism which came before that,
oh man,
and before that, all the way down. Yeah. And so
I guess that's why meditation and being in the moment is so spiritual to us, because maybe it's just so true. It's just we are here now. That's all that there really is.
Yeah.
And ever was.
But yeah. And to try to take yourself out of that chain for a second, I guess, maybe is what meditation would do.
Yes.
So like to cut off stop making decisions, stop thinking.
Yes.
And exist, like put it on pause for a few moments.
And there's something it's very fleeting. I mean, people think when you meditate, you're supposed to feel like that the whole time, but you don't.
Yeah.
You only feel in the moment for nanoseconds at a time, and then you're immediately out of it. But in those moments, it just feels so true.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's just, we're talking milliseconds. We're talking milliseconds sometimes of getting outside of determinism and consciousness. It's just that little split second where you're like, I'm free. I'm free there for a second. And then it's right back in. You can't get out of it.
Right.
But Sapolsky says, once you work with the notion that every aspect of behavior has deterministic prior causes, you observe a behavior and can answer why it occurred. As just noted, because of the action of neurons in this or that part of your brain in the preceding second, and in the seconds to minutes before, those neurons were activated by thought, memory, and emotion. And in the hours to days before that behavior occurred, the hormones in your circulation shape those thoughts, memories, and emotions.
Oh my God.
So in other words, how you're responding to your environmental causes, like we were talking about the environmental cues, has already been programmed into you by what happened earlier in your life, how you were being raised. And then you talk about the culture on top of that, human evolution, all of
genetics.
These things. What Sapolsky's saying, you're predisposed to certain responses already.
Yes.
So, and then if you add that to this idea of like we're just unconsciously responding to stimuli because before we even become conscious of it, then basically it's already determined how we're going to act.
So Sapolsky's saying we should all just off ourselves because it's pointless. We're just vermin.
See, that's what he said. He says he knows it's hard. He knows it's hard for people to come to it, but he's also like, you kind of have to admit it, or, and one of the things people talk about is, they're always like, oh, this is ridiculous. If you take away free will like that, then what's the point of doing anything? Or like people, it'd just be chaos. It'd just be chaos if people don't have to take responsibility for their actions. And Sapolsky, again, that's what he's saying is, you still hold people responsible for their actions, but it would be our punishment for them should take into account that maybe they weren't completely in control of what they wanted to do.
Yes.
In other words, because our sense of punishment from, culturally is that, our sense of punishment culturally is that people are responsible for their actions, and that's why they should be punished.
Right. And that boils down to free will because it scares us that somebody could commit a crime and not be conscious of it, that things are working in them that are contributing to committing the crime, because that scares the fuck out of us, because that means any of us could do it and we're not in control of it.
Right.
It's like when you're driving down, like impulse control. You drive down the street on the highway, and those two yellow lines are keeping us from just driving across them and smashing into the other person. And it's scary when you think about that. Or if you're holding a knife and you're like, oh my God, I could just stab this person sitting next to you, like, any of those moments that I could drive off the cliff, like all of those moments scare us
Right.
And so that we don't have control, it's just, that's really what it all comes down to, isn't it?
Yeah. And he talks about one of the other things about it is well first of all I'll say what does somebody do whenever somebody commits a horrible crime? What they always say, that's not me. That's not me. That's not who I am. And it's
and the neighbors all say it too. They're always like, he was a quiet. I never saw it coming.
Yeah. Or if somebody says something really racist, really horrible, that's not me. That's not me.
I'm not a racist. I just said that. Yeah.
But and one of the things Sapolsky talks about also is the development of the prefrontal cortex. Like, he gives a lot of examples in the book.
Yeah.
And he talks about the development of the prefrontal cortex.
It always comes down to the prefrontal. Here we go.
And you knew I was going to say it. You knew it was already
going to it.
But the prefrontal cortex in our brain is the part that determines our sociability, how we react with others, the choices we make.
Yeah.
And he says, for example, child abuse as a child actually it inhibits the growth of the prefrontal cortex, or it influences it has an effect on the development of the prefrontal cortex. So if someone is abused as a child, their prefrontal cortex won't be as developed, or will be developed to not be as sociable as somebody who wasn't abused as a child.
Makes sense.
So then that begins to determine how that person reacts in society.
Yes.
So when they get to be an adult, and the prefrontal cortex isn't complete until like mid-20s or something, but then you get to be like
even
30.
Later now. There's some people are saying it's close to 30.
Yeah. But at that point, you're an adult who doesn't have the same prefrontal cortex as other people.
Else. Yeah.
And your response has already been predisposed you to respond in a different way.
Yes.
To what other people just take as like, well, that's no problem.
Yes.
And so again, that, Sapolsky says this is one of the problems of when you say that there's no free will and everything is determined, is because people as a culture don't know what to do with that. Because not only are you saying criminals aren't necessarily completely responsible for what they did, but he says also it's hard in our culture where we try to say like, oh, people, he really worked hard. He willed himself to be rich, because suddenly you can't take, you're not responsible for that either. So all the things that people
what's the one thing all rich people want to say? They want to tell you how they did it.
I know.
They're all like, oh, well, you just got to work hard and put your note. Well, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
You're got to be right. It's situational football, but somebody's got to fumble the ball and you pick it up.
Yeah. Or somehow you had a bigger budget to get the bigger players on your team. You know what I mean? It was already set up. Everything was set up. Yeah. It was already set up for you to succeed in that way. And he says, ultimately, at that point, people, you look at it that way, and it's what you said too, John. It's like, it's very hard for us. Like, where's the enjoyment in it?
And scary. It's fearful. Yeah. It's scary as hell. Because if you can't control whether you're going to be rich or not is one thing. If you can't control whether you're going to kill somebody or not.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's terrifying. Yeah.
That is terrifying.
So some of us are already predisposed to murder somebody, and we don't even know it because we can't think that we're a murderer. We don't think that we're a murderer. Otherwise, if you do, it's like if you think you're going to kill yourself, if you consciously think it, chances are you're not going to do it. Because you're already working out the awareness of, I feel like killing myself. Because when people who try to kill themselves, they never talk about deciding to kill themselves necessarily.
Right. I think it's always just for through my work, I do a lot of training for suicide prevention and things. And it's always interesting that they think if you interrupt if somebody's talking about saying I'm going to kill myself or nothing's worth it, but if you interrupt that and kind of give it just just say like, are you planning on killing yourself?
Yeah.
Or just something to kind of make them think for a moment, get them out of that thought.
Out of that ideation, that trap, that groove that you're caught in.
Right.
But then now you're saying all of that, you talking to them and interrupting, all of that's all predetermined.
It could be. I don't know what to think about all of this. I don't know what to think about Sapolsky's book, about free will.
You're predisposed to not know what to think.
I know. That's where you just go down. It's like a time travel movie. You know what I mean? It's like you get a time travel movie. Every time travel movie at a certain point is like, wait a second, why are there two of them back there? Why are they? Oh, but hopefully, John, this gives us something to chew on for the new year.
Oh my God! Well, there's this idea of the multiverse of this infinite number of universes where every single possibility is being played out at the same time.
Yeah.
So you being interrupted with your suicidal ideation is in one universe. You not being interrupted is in another universe. Something else, another version of that is in another. And all of those spider webs going out in all of these different directions are all being played out in one way or another in all of these parallel universes.
Yeah. What was that movie? Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, or whatever.
Yes,
Did you see that one? That was a great movie.
Great movie. Yeah.
But again, I would say,
so was the Spideyverse. The Spider-Man.
I didn't see the Spideyverse.
Oh, it's good.
But again, like, well, who's the real us in all of that? Because in each of those individual multiverses, we would still be just responding to what happened previously to us.
Exactly. So that's the fear. That's why we have to propagate this notion that we're in charge of our future, because it's scary as fuck to realize that we're not.
This is a good way to start out 2024. Start out 2024.
So none of us, you're basically telling all of us not to decide anything or do anything because it doesn't matter anyway. And if you do decide, it's only because you chose to decide previously based on your genetics.
I'm not saying anything. I'm not saying anything.
You're just something told you not to say that you're not saying anything.
See, this is where and people get very mad. They get very mad. For Sapolsky's book, there are people who have written against it, and they make valid arguments too. But it's very people get very mad because they're scared. It's very scary. Terrifying. It's very scary. But I will say, I was in therapy for many years, and one time my shrink asked. I may need to go back in after this podcast.
I don't know. You're doing great. Well, who knows? You already do know. There's a part of you that knows that you are going back into therapy.
Yeah. But, my shrink once asked me, he goes, what would you do if you could get away with anything, if there were no repercussions? Like if you could do anything in your life and get away. And it may be something that all shrinks ask. Yeah. And maybe people can think about, what would you do if you could get away with anything? And honestly, John, I sat there and I thought for a long time, and I said, nothing. There is nothing I would do differently. There is no crime I would go out. I wouldn't go out and attack people. I would live my life exactly the same way as I am now, even knowing I could get away with it, because it's just the right thing to do. And again, I think that comes down to how I see free will and determinism. I really don't care if it is determined or if everything's determined and I just have the impression that it's free.
Yes.
I'm still going to try to be the best person I can possibly be and treat people with compassion and treat people with respect, even if there's nothing in the end, even if it just plays out. So
you're saying it doesn't really matter which choices you make. It's the sort of that present moment of love and openness that is all there ever was anyway.
Right. And if you want to get, we can't get into everything that the book talks about, but keep in mind, we always thought that on a macro level, physics, Newtonian physics, responds in a certain way. There's certain laws that are, incontrovertible for Newtonian physics. But then in the last few decades, we've realized on a quantum level, on a very small level, there is, there is chaos, or we can't tell what happens. So who knows
You're
what
talking
actually...
about string theory.
Yeah.
Yes. And that happens over and over and over with humans. We constantly think we have it figured out, and then we don't.
Yeah.
And it scares us, but I guess there's a part of me that's filled with wonderment about that.
Yeah, so I don't know where
depressed.
this is all going. Also, one other thing I'll say, my final closing remark is a couple months ago, I stopped in the Fudge Factory in Uranus, Missouri. There's a place called the Fudge Factory.
That's the end of the world.
Yeah.
That is the end of the world if you're in the Fudge Factory in Uranus, Missouri.
Yeah, it's everything in there is a pun. It's all like, the best fudge comes from Uranus. But there was a shirt in there that said a T-shirt, because they have a bunch of T-shirts that are really fun.
I want a Fudge Factory from Uranus, Missouri T-shirt.
Next time I go through, I'll get you one.
God damn it.
But it says, the T-shirt said, "Bad decisions make good stories." And again, I would say, I completely agree with that. I completely agree. It's your bad decisions are the ones that make good stories. And whether or not that is predetermined, or whether or not that is my own free will to make a bad decision, it still makes a good story, I guess.
Even if all of this is mapped out, even if all of it's mapped out, we're never going to know the map.
Right.
So who cares?
Right.
Who cares whether it's mapped out or not? Because to us, it's not mapped out. Our experience of it is that it's not mapped out. So whether it is or not, it doesn't really make a difference.
Amen, brother. Amen. All right, John, I think you've summed it up. Well. Anyway, Happy New Year, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Happy New Year. Don't quit anything. Don't decide quit. To do anything. It doesn't matter. Even if you quit, it was already decided. So you didn't do shit.
And you're not alone. We're all on this journey together. We don't know where it's going, but we're on this journey together.
That's true.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please tell a friend about it. And if you have a question or topic you feel humanity should know about, please send it in. John.
Human number 2 signing off.
And this is Human number 1. Happy New Year's. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, John. We love you guys. Hang in there.